Welcome to the Urban GardenHER YouTube channel. My name is Alexis and I am the Urban GardenHER. So you guys, today is the day, you know, like Mariah Carey sings that soprano when it's Christmas time. I ain't gonna do it because I ain't gonna embarrass myself, but y'all know what I'm talking about. But it is time to finally harvest our collard greens right on time for Thanksgiving, which is about 2-3 days away. And so I'm actually going to harvest mine ahead of time because, you know, I'm a busy working parent. Um, and I just don't have time to wait until the day before or the day of Thanksgiving to harvest, cook, clean, all those things to the collard greens. We're going to go ahead and harvest them a few days earlier, and we're going to clean them off and then also do what's called blanching them, which is like a quick little shortcut way to cook them before we cook them again, so that we won't have to do all this work the day of or the day before Thanksgiving. Again, y'all, I'm a working, busy mom and a parent, and me and my husband just don't have the time to just, you know, harvest, clean, and do all these things right before Thanksgiving, which would be ideal. But, you know, thankfully, the process that we're going to do to blanch them is going to preserve the taste and the flavor. So we get to, you know, reap the benefits of that. And also, let me know if y'all can hear me. I got a new mic today. So if y'all can hear me or not, let me know. But we are going to harvest our collard greens, which have actually started growing, let's see, around July. And you guys, this is why it's such a great celebration, like for me right now, because this is my first year growing them and being able to harvest them right before, in time for Thanksgiving, which is like prime time for collard green season. And so, you know, just goes to show, like, this has been years in the making. It's been about 6-7 years now. And I finally got the timing right to harvest them or to grow them, start them. And which was around July when I started them indoors. And I think the lesson that I learned this year of the timing is that collard greens are pretty hardy in the summertime. They're heat tolerant somewhat. They're not going to taste as good, but they're heat tolerant to grow at least. And we had a very hot summer, so that I was able to grow them from late summer into fall and now close to winter. And they're also frost tolerant. So again, you guys, just because they're cool weather loving vegetables doesn't mean you can't really have collard greens growing in the summertime. You can, they're just not going to taste as good. But I got the timing right. So I'm ready to harvest my different greens. I'll show you also the other kinds of greens that I'm going to be harvesting, that we're probably going to do like a mixed pot of them. So let me quit yapping because y'all told me I yap a lot in my intros. But let me go ahead and let's get started with harvesting our collard greens. All right, y'all. So the first sets of greens that we're going to harvest are what's called the Morris Heading collard greens. And these greens, actually, shout out to my sis Farm Unique. Y'all go follow her too. She actually put me on to Morris Heading collard greens because they grow like so tall, and you can harvest using what's called the cut and come again method. You can use a cut and come again method for all of your greens and like lettuces, but you know, they grow so tall, and so as you cut the outer limbs or outer stems, leaves of your collard greens, the main stem will continue to grow. So don't pull out your plant, don't chop it down, leave it in the ground. We're going to harvest what's the outer limbs, I keep saying limbs, outer leaves of our plant. So these are Morris Heading. Actually, these are broccoli, so we're going to leave those alone. But yeah, let's start harvesting our Morris Heading collards first. So if you guys can recall, if you've been following along on my journey, these greens have been through so much, from extreme heat, and actually we just had a snow on a few days ago, so they should be nice and flavorful, because they say that the frost makes them taste a lot sweeter. So you see this here stem of the Morris Heading collards. We're just going to harvest the bottom leaves, you guys. Just pull them off, just snap them off just like that. And this is around the size that you can start harvesting your greens, because you know they're pretty mature at this point. They're not as huge as they can be, but I would say about like the leaves are about 8 inches long is around the time, 8 to 10 inches is around the time you can start harvesting your greens. So this is a nice, they're really thick, y'all. These are gonna make for some great greens when you cook them down. Because again, greens can cook down. So we're going to harvest as much as we can. And we're not going to harvest the whole entire plant because, again, with the cut and come again method, we're cutting down the leaves, but the main part is going to continue to grow from the middle as long as we keep taking care of it, nurturing it, giving it nutrients, getting the bugs off so that they don't eat them up. This will continue to grow. I'm actually probably going to do like one more stem. Probably people will probably leave this in. Maybe I'll leave it in. I don't know. I'm tempted to harvest this one. I'll probably just harvest just this one here. And this is going to just continue to grow more. So leave the rest of this plant here because it'll continue to just grow upwards. And we're just going to have a long, tall stem for collards growing all through probably even next summer. And sometimes I've heard, and I haven't tried it yet, but some collards are actually perennial. They can grow year round. And so I've seen people have collards for like a couple years. Okay, guys, so here you see me harvesting my Georgia Southern collard greens, and I'm just look at them, y'all. I'm the most proud of these greens because of how big they got. Like, I think I attribute this to me starting them indoors late July and then transplanting them outdoors in August and then just continuously taking care of them throughout the course of late summer and fall, and it paid off. Like, they just got so big. I fertilized them with the nitrogen rich fertilizer, which was the fish emulsion fertilizer, made sure it was diluted, and made sure that the bugs weren't eating them up before we did. And it paid off. I'm just so proud of myself. I'm proud of the greens, and that we were able to enjoy them. But again, I'm using the cut and come again method, harvesting the outer leaves of the plant so that the plant will continuously grow. And although we got a harvest round before Thanksgiving, I don't anticipate growing or doing another big harvest like this by Christmas or New Year's because we've just had our first, well, we have a freeze. It's cold here in DC, y'all. So once it gets really cold outside, your plants just slow down in production and growth. And I just don't think that they'll grow as big. We'll be lucky if they do. You never say never. So we'll just enjoy this first round of growing our collard greens, and we'll leave them in the ground to overwinter because they are frost tolerant, and then they'll perk back up by spring and summertime, and then we'll do some more harvesting then. But until then, I'm just so proud of this, and we'll continuously just make sure that our plants are taken care of, monitor them for any bugs, and keep an eye out for the weather. Although we do get snow here, snow does not damage your brassicas really. Well, not all of them, but they don't damage the collard greens. At least they haven't for me in the past. So I'm probably gonna leave these uncovered all winter. And so we'll just, be grateful for what we have this season. All right, guys. So now that we have harvested our collard greens, we can bring them indoors and rinse them off and clean them and everything before we start blanching. So usually a lot of gardeners will rinse their stems off outdoors, just to make sure they get all the dirt off before they come in, bring them inside again. I didn't do that. I skipped a step. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I mean, our greens are pretty clean-ish outdoors. There wasn't a lot of backsplash from the sand, the dirt that, when watering or anything. So they're pretty clean from any dirt, but and the bugs, I've got a lot of them off beforehand, but there were still some that were in the water, but I basically filled up our sink. Made sure you clean your sink out first, y'all. Okay, before y'all say anything, I did clean my sink out real good before I threw these greens in here. Make sure you do that a good job cleaning your sink out first. And then you fill it up with some water. And then I use vinegar to just, rinse them off and desanitize. No, not desanitize. I don't know if that's the word I want to use. But to clean out the greens in a natural way. And some people put vinegar and baking soda. I didn't do that, but the vinegar was just fine. I did about 3 rounds of cleaning the greens off, and vinegar kind of just, I guess, I don't know, I guess it kills any bugs also that are on there, because there were a couple caterpillars that I had missed. So I just soak them in there for a little bit, rinse them off, and then I pull off probably each, leaf, stem, leaf out of the water, and rinse it off again with some water, hit it with the water, spray it down, and then drain the water out. But I'm gonna tell y'all how the water looks the first time after soaking them in this vinegar water, y'all. Them greens be dirty, so don't skip this step now. Example number one, look how dirty that water is after cleaning them. So again, it pays off to clean off your greens, but again, I cleaned my greens off 3 different times in some vinegar water, and then the water started to look clear. So next, I removed the stems. I started cutting them off. So, a lot of people have different preferences on whether or not to keep the stems of their collard greens. We remove them just because of my husband's preference. I really don't care, but we just take our stems off, and I skipped that step in the video, but you can see how they look after you cut the stems off. You see that pile of stems in the corner. Make sure y'all compost your stems, you guys, or use them in other stir fries. Those are nutrients. You can still eat those. So don't throw them away. You can use them for other dishes, use them in a broth, boil them down for a broth, or whatever you have you. But I ended up composting them, and I, rolled up the leaves and then sliced them down. This just is an easier way to cut your greens down. I learned this from my husband, who is the chef of our house, and taught me how to cut and clean collard greens. So this is just how we cut our collard greens so that we can, they can break down easier when you're cooking them and eating them. And this is how they look, you guys. Look how pretty they are. All right, so let's go to our next step of blanching. Okay, guys, so now we're going to blanch our collard greens. So before you start this step, make sure you have a pot of boiling water and also have your bowl of ice water next to you, because literally this process is going to be quick, and you want to have all the things you need so that you can be ready for it and not cook your greens all the way. You don't want to do that. This is not what this is. This is blanching. And so once that water boils, you're going to throw all of your collard greens into the pot of boiling water and cook them, blanch them, blanch them for 2 minutes max. No more than that. And I say max because it might be less. It might be 1 minute, depending on how quickly the greens start to blanch or cook down. And so, again, this process just basically retains the flavor, preserves the flavor of whatever you're blanching, and also the color, so that when you do freeze them, they taste just like you had just harvested them. And so 2 minutes max. I think I did about a minute and a half for these because it cooked so quickly, y'all. They were so tender from being outdoors and having that frost hit them. And then you're just going to pull them out and then throw them into that bowl of ice water to stop that cooking process. It's going to shock them. So they're going to just stop cooking. You don't want them to cook anymore. And so then that you can throw them into whatever bag or whatever container you choose to freeze them in. And here is where we're going to shock our collard greens from cooking any further by throwing them in that bowl of ice water that you already had ready beside that pot of boiling water, so that we can just stop the process of cooking and blanch them so that they'll be ready to be able to be thrown into a bag or container, whatever you choose to freeze your collard greens or whatever you're blanching. All right, guys. So now we're going to put our blanched collard greens into the freezer bag. So I have these reusable freezer bags I got off of Amazon. I have them in my Amazon storefront, which is linked in my description. But I just love them because, I don't feel so bad about, throwing away all those disposable Ziploc bags. And so once we're done, we're going to throw them into the freezer. And then whenever we're ready to cook our greens, we're just going to pull them out, thaw them out, defrost them, put them in the pot, and cook them up just like we would regularly cook them up. And this is just, save y'all that time and cleaning and harvesting right before you're cooking your collard greens. All right, you guys. So we just finished harvesting our first round of collard greens right before the holiday season. Yay! We did what was called the cut and come again method so that we can have a continuous harvest for collard greens this season. And then we also went through how we clean our collard greens so that we can remove all the dirt and just residue that's on them, because we don't want to get all that nasty stuff in our pot of greens. And then also how to cut your stems off if you don't want them, and then you can keep them as well, use them for a broth, boil them up, or compost them. And then also how to blanch your greens so that you can save yourself time. If you don't have time to cook them and you want to just prep them beforehand and freeze them for another time, you use blanching method to be able to cook them really quickly. So I hope you all have a wonderful, happy, safe, healthy, and just blessed holiday season. And you all keep growing for the year and look forward to 2025. Let's start thinking and planning for our next gardens spring. And until next time, happy gardening.